Sagittarius. When someone survives on your light and you forget to live your own life, dear Sagittarius, you are a rare flame. One that doesn't just burn for yourself, but warms the hearts of those who have lived too long in the shadows. When you enter someone's life, you bring spring after a long winter. You become the first sunrise they've seen in months, maybe years. But here is a truth that is both gentle and sharp. Not everyone knows how to create their own light. And when someone begins to survive on yours, day after day, you may find yourself growing tired without knowing why. The heaviness doesn't come from grand sacrifices. It's in the quiet ways you start holding yourself back so their world doesn't feel dark again. It's not a crime to give. Your generosity is your gift. But when giving becomes a constant drain instead of a shared exchange, you risk forgetting that your life, your dreams, your adventures need tending to. In this journey, I will walk you through the 4 gates of awareness. We'll begin with the sweetness of connection, then trace the subtle shift into imbalance, the invisible chains of dependency, and finally, the truth about your light and its purpose. By the end, you'll understand not just how to protect your flame, but why doing so is the most loving thing you can offer, to yourself and to them. And if this message stirs something inside you, stay until the end. I'm Sophia, your guide at Zodiac Wisdom, where we explore astrology not as predictions, but as soul maps for living fully. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, and share, because your light may be the spark someone else is waiting for. Gate 1, the sweet beginning of a connection. It always begins in a way that feels pure, almost sacred. You meet this person during a time when they are walking through their own winter. Everything in their life feels muted, stripped of color. Their laughter, when it appears at all, is thin and cautious, as though joy is a stranger they no longer trust. And then there's you, Sagittarius. Warm, bright, and possibly alive. You carry within you the rare ability to bring spring into places where frost has lingered too long. First, you don't even think about what you're giving. It's natural for you to share your light, your optimism, your wisdom, your belief that the world is still worth exploring. You are ruled by Jupiter, after all, the planet of expansion and hope. Helping someone rediscover their own joy feels as instinctive as breathing. And in the beginning it feels good, more than good, it feels like you're doing exactly what you were born to do. You see the shift happen almost immediately. Their posture changes when you walk into the room. Their eyes, once clouded, begin to catch the light again. They start telling stories they haven't told in years, laughing at jokes they might have once ignored. You share conversations that stretch into the night, moments when you feel as if you've been given a rare privilege, witnessing the slow, beautiful revival of a soul. In your mind, it's simple. You've helped someone find the way back to themselves. You've reminded them that life can be warm, that trust can be rebuilt, that the world holds beauty worth leaning into. And it feels noble, feels right. It feels like love, not necessarily romantic love, but the deeper kind, the love that says, I see you, I believe in you, I will hold the lantern until you can see the path for yourself. The beginning of such a connection is intoxicating for both of you. They are grateful for the light you provide. You are fulfilled by seeing them flourish. It's an exchange that seems balanced in its own way. You give, they receive, and in their healing you feel your own heart grow softer. But here is where the invisible thread begins to weave itself, strand by delicate strand. In your giving there is an unspoken hope that they will one day stand in their own light, without needing yours as a constant source. And in their receiving there is an unspoken fear that without your light, the shadows might return. This is where the metaphor of the wounded bird comes alive. Imagine finding a small bird with a broken wing. You scoop it up gently, build it a safe nest, feed it with care. In the beginning, every flutter of its wing, every sign of healing fills you with joy. You dream of the day it will lift off into the sky strong and free. That is the purpose of your care, not to keep it forever, but to give it back to the world whole again. Yet sometimes that day doesn't come. Not because the bird cannot fly, but because the safety of your hands has become its new world. And you, Sagittarius, with your generous heart, may hesitate to set it free, not out of selfishness, but because you don't want to see it struggle again. You don't want to be the one to remove its comfort. What makes this stage so subtle is that it still feels good for now. There is no resentment, no exhaustion. You are still fueled by the beauty of their transformation. You still believe you are on a shared journey toward their independence. But in the quiet, beneath the surface, The seeds of dependency are being planted. They are learning, without realizing it, that your presence equals safety, that your light is their compass, that your encouragement is the wind beneath their wings. And here's the truth that many Sagittarius souls overlook in this stage. While your light can illuminate the path, it cannot walk it for them. You are not meant to be the permanent generator of someone else's happiness. Your flame is meant to inspire, to awaken, to remind, but it is not meant to replace the light they must build within themselves. The astrology supports this truth. With Jupiter as your ruler, you thrive on expansion. Not just for yourself, but for those around you. You believe in the boundless potential of others, sometimes even more than they believe in themselves. That's part of your gift. But Jupiter's lesson is also about wisdom, knowing that true growth requires self-reliance. If someone only ever stands in your sunshine, they will never learn to kindle their own. The first gate, then, is not about seeing danger or betrayal. It's about noticing the sweetness that can quietly turn into a trap. This is the stage where love, compassion, and generosity flow easily, where giving feels endless because you haven't yet noticed the slow draw on your own reserves. It is beautiful. It is tender. And it is exactly why it's so easy to miss the moment when things begin to shift. Your challenge here is awareness. To give freely but with a watchful heart. To hold the bird in your hands, but always with the intention of letting it fly. To shine your light in someone's darkness, but to remember that your own life, your own adventures, dreams, and joy needs that same light too. Because here's the quiet truth. If you forget to feed your own flame while keeping someone else's burning, there will come a day when you find yourself dimmed, wondering where all your fire went. And it won't be because someone stole it. It will be because you forgot that your light was never meant to be given away in full. This is the essence of the first gate. The recognition that even the most beautiful beginnings require boundaries. It is where love and wisdom must walk hand in hand, so that in helping someone find their light, you don't lose sight of your own. Gate 2, when the balance begins to tip. At first, you don't notice the shift. It happens slowly, in ways so small you could mistake them for nothing at all. A conversation here, a choice there. Little ripples that don't seem significant until they gather into a current strong enough to pull you away from your own shore. The relationship that began with a sense of mutual warmth starts to lean heavily in one direction. You are still the giver, still the flame, still the one holding the lantern. But the exchange that once felt balanced begins to tilt, quietly but unmistakably. You start saying yes more often. Not because it's what you truly want, but because you don't want to see disappointment in their eyes. You begin to edit your stories, to choose the safer topics, because you've noticed that your moments of success sometimes leave them silent instead of cheering. You downplay your excitement when something wonderful happens, telling yourself, I don't want to make them feel less than. This is the first sign that the balance has shifted. Not in the obvious way of arguments or open resentment, but in the quiet rewiring of your behavior. You begin to make yourself smaller, not because you've lost confidence, but because you believe shrinking yourself will preserve the peace. Here's the truth, Sagittarius. You are a natural expander. Under Jupiter's influence, your instinct is to stretch into new experiences, to grow beyond what's comfortable. That's what makes you magnetic. But when you start curbing that expansion, when you tuck your wings in just to fit inside someone else's comfort zone, you are living against your own nature. And living against your nature always comes with a cost. The cost doesn't appear all at once. In the beginning, you might not even feel it. You may still be telling yourself that these little concessions are just kindness, that adjusting your energy is simply what you do for people you care about. And yes, kindness is a virtue, but constant self-editing is not kindness. It's erosion. Think of it like this. Imagine a candle burning in the center of a room. Another person brings their candle close to yours, and you gladly share your flame so theirs can light. At first, this is beautiful, two lights glowing together. But while you're focused on their flame, you forget to add wax to your own candle. Slowly, imperceptibly, your light grows smaller, even as theirs remains bright. And here's the paradox. You might still feel proud of how brightly they're shining, all the while ignoring the fact that your own base is melting away. Astrologically, this stage often mirrors transits involving the Sun or Venus, opposing your natal placements. Oppositions create mirrors. They reveal how you're seen through someone else's eyes. This can be a time when you unconsciously begin defining yourself through another person's comfort, needs, or limitations, rather than your own vision. The more you adjust for them, the less you're living for yourself. The most dangerous part? You may not see it as a problem. Not yet. You might even convince yourself that this is what love looks like, that compromise is simply part of connection. And while compromise is a healthy part of any relationship, Sagittarius, the compromise should never be so heavy on one side that your own identity starts fading in the process. I want you to pause here and ask yourself a question. After spending time with this person, do you feel expanded or diminished? Do you leave the interaction with more fire in your belly? Or do you walk away feeling slightly dimmed, slightly drained without fully knowing why? Your body always knows before your mind catches up. Maybe you feel tired more often, or less eager to talk about your dreams. Maybe you've noticed a hesitation in your voice when you speak about your goals, as though you're subconsciously gauging their reaction before you even finish your sentence. These are the quiet alarms going off inside you. The tipping of the balance is rarely dramatic. It's not a door slamming. It's a door slowly closing on the parts of you that used to roam freely. And because you value harmony, you may even help close that door without realizing it. The extended metaphor here is the candle, but let me give you another. A well that once overflowed with water. At first, you draw from it generously for yourself and for others. But when one person comes back to your well again and again without bringing anything to replenish it, no rainwater, no care for its walls, the water level drops. It happens gradually enough that you might not notice the change until you lean over one day and see the bottom staring back at you. In this stage, the lesson from the stars is one of boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are channels that make sure the flow of energy remains healthy for both sides. Without boundaries, your giving turns into depletion. With boundaries, your giving becomes sustainable, nourishing you as much as it nourishes them. But here's the catch. When you first begin to restore balance, the other person might feel the shift, and not in a pleasant way. If they've grown accustomed to receiving more than they give, your change may feel like a loss to them. This is why so many Sagittarius souls hesitate to adjust the balance. They fear the discomfort it might cause. Yet the truth is this. If the connection is genuine, they will adapt. They will learn to stand more in their own light, and in doing so, the relationship will grow stronger. But if the connection depends entirely on you dimming yourself, it's not a connection, it's a tether. Gate 2 is the quiet recognition that the scales have tilted. It's the moment you begin to see that your fire, as generous as it is not infinite. It's where you realize that without tending to your own flame, you cannot keep anyone else's burning for long. And perhaps most importantly, it's the understanding that saying yes all the time does not make you a better friend, partner, or healer. It simply makes you a smaller version of yourself. And Sagittarius, you were never meant to live small. Gate 3, when dependency becomes an invisible chain. By the time you reach this gate, the shift is no longer subtle. It's quiet, yes, but it's no longer invisible to the part of you that's starting to wake up. You notice it in the way they look to you before making decisions, in how your absence feels heavier to them than it should, in how, when you speak about change, growth, or the future, the air between you grows tense. This is not about malice. They may not even realize they're doing it. In their mind, you are a safe harbor, steady, warm, always lit. You've become the constant in their life, the one they can count on to bring the light back when darkness creeps in. That's not inherently bad, until it becomes the only way they know how to feel safe. And here's where the chain forms. Not from control or force, but from emotional reliance so deep that your movement threatens their stability. It's like you're both standing on a dock. You, Sagittarius, are ready to set sail. Your ship is stocked, your maps are drawn, your heart is itching for the horizon. But they are afraid of the open water. So they smile and suggest, why not just stay here a little longer? And because you care, you agree. Once, then again, and again, until one day, your sails have grown dusty, and your ship has become part of the dock itself. Astrologically, this dynamic often appears during heavy Saturn transits to your personal planets. Moments when life tests your commitment, boundaries, and resilience. Saturn can anchor you in place, sometimes for your own good, but in this case, the anchor belongs to someone else's fear. The dangerous part? You may start mistaking their need for love. Need and love can look similar on the surface, They both come with closeness, intimacy, shared moments. But love celebrates your growth. Need tries to keep you in one shape, one place because change threatens the balance it depends on. And because you're generous, you tell yourself you're staying put out of compassion. You convince yourself it's noble to be their steady light, even if it means pausing your own journey. But deep down, a question begins to form. If my dreams require me to dim my light for them, are they really my dreams anymore? This is where the invisible chain tightens, not through conflict, but through the constant choosing of them over yourself. The more often you choose their comfort over your own calling, the more natural it feels to keep doing so. That's how the chain becomes part of you, woven into your routines, your decisions, even your identity. Here's an image for you. Imagine a bird with strong wings living inside a beautiful aviary. The space is comfortable, safe, and filled with everything the bird needs. There's even another bird there, one who depends on the first bird's presence to feel secure. Every now and then, the first bird looks through the open door to the sky beyond. But each time the second bird sings, "Please stay, it's too cold out there." And so the first bird stays. The door remains open, but the wings forget what the wind feels like. That's the trap. You think you're free because the door isn't locked. But freedom unused is just another kind of cage. Sagittarius, your sign is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, exploration, and truth. Your soul thrives on movement, discovery, and the stretching of limits. Staying still for too long, especially in service to someone else's fear, will always drain you. The sadness comes not from the stillness itself, but from knowing you're not where you're meant to be. The spiritual lesson here is subtle but profound. You cannot carry someone to their own awakening. You can inspire, you can guide, you can light the path, but you cannot walk it for them. And if you keep standing still so they won't feel abandoned, you're abandoning yourself instead. This gate asks you to see dependency for what it is, not as a testament to your value, but as a signal that balance has been lost. It invites you to ask, am I still growing here? Does this relationship make room for both of us to evolve? If I stepped forward, would they cheer? Or ask me to step back? If the answer leans toward the latter, then you are living with a chain around your ankle. You may not hear it rattle, but you feel it every time you hesitate before saying yes to your own life. The only way through this gate is honesty. You must be willing to tell the truth, not just to them but to yourself. You must acknowledge that your light was never meant to be a permanent power source for another soul. It's meant to ignite their own fire, so they can walk beside you, not tether you in place. Here's the paradox that makes Sagittarius so uniquely challenged in this. You see the potential in people. You can glimpse who they could become, and that vision makes it even harder to let go. But you have to remember, potential is not the same as reality. You can't live in someone else's could-be while sacrificing your own will-be. Gate 3 is where you decide whether you will keep letting the chain define your movement, or whether you will gently, lovingly start to unfasten it. Not by shoving them away, not by abandoning them, but by stepping toward the horizon again, trusting that the healthiest connections are the ones that walk alongside you, not hold you back. Because Sagittarius, you weren't made to stay on the dock. You were made to sail. And no chain, invisible or not, can change that truth. Gate 4, the truth about your light. Sagittarius, there comes a moment in every journey when you finally see yourself clearly. Not as the world has framed you, not as others have leaned on you, but as you truly are. Gate 4 is that moment. This is where you understand that your light was never meant to be stationary. You were not born to be a fixed lamp in the corner of someone else's room. You are a moving flame, a fire meant to travel, transform, and ignite change wherever it goes. Here's the thing about light. When it stays in one place too long, the people around it can start to believe it's theirs. They don't mean to claim it. It's just human nature to grow used to what is constant. And if they've never learned how to kindle their own fire, your presence becomes their only source of warmth. It's comforting for them. But for you, it's a slow erosion, because while you're busy being their light, you forget that you too need to keep feeding the flame. And a flame unfed doesn't go out in a dramatic burst. It dims little by little, until one day you look around and realize you've been living at half power for years. The truth is, your light is not supposed to be anyone's sole survival source. It's supposed to inspire them to light their own. In healthy connections, your glow encourages others to rise, not to lean. They see you soar, And instead of holding you back, they start flapping their own wings. Think of it like a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't chase ships or carry them to shore. It stands tall, shining far, showing the way. The ships must still navigate the waters themselves. If the lighthouse tried to become the ship, it would lose the very height and strength that make its light so powerful. Astrologically, this is the essence of Sagittarius under the influence of Jupiter. Your rulership by the planet of expansion means you are at your best when you are exploring, learning, and moving. And when Uranus or Mars touches your chart, you feel the call to break free, to burst out of any space that tries to contain you. But here's where it gets tender. The people who depend on your light are often the ones you care about most. You don't want to hurt them. You don't want them to feel abandoned. And so you tell yourself, maybe I can stay a little longer. But you already know the cost, because you felt it in the quiet moments, when you dream of places you've never been, goals you've put off, adventures you've postponed. The spiritual truth? Protecting your light is not selfish. It's essential, because when your flame burns at full strength, you can illuminate far more than the small circle around you. You can reach distant hearts. You can light paths for strangers you've never met. You can inspire more people than you ever could by keeping yourself dim for the comfort of one. There's another layer of truth here, one that's harder to admit. Sometimes the reason people try to keep you in place is not just because they love you, but because your growth makes them see where they haven't grown themselves. Your expansion challenges them to face their own unlit corners. And that's not always comfortable. But you are not here to make everyone comfortable. You are here to live fully, to expand into the vastness your soul was designed for. When you do that unapologetically, you don't just free yourself, you give silent permission for others to do the same. Here's a visual to carry with you. Imagine you are in a dark room, holding a lantern. People gather around you, grateful for the light. But after a while, you notice a door at the far side of the room. Beyond it is an even bigger space. A whole landscape waiting for your light. When you tell the group you want to step through, some beg you to stay. We need you here, they say. And you realize with love but also clarity. If you never leave, neither will they. So you take a deep breath. You set your lantern down just long enough to light 2 more, placing them in the hands of those who are ready. Then you step toward the door, trusting that the ones who truly value your light will learn to carry it themselves. Gate 4 is the place where you stop apologizing for wanting more, where you remember that your light is infinite when you feed it, but finite when you let it burn only for someone else's needs. It's the moment you choose expansion over containment, evolution over stagnation, truth over comfort. Because Sagittarius, you were never meant to be just a source of light. You are a traveler of horizons, a seeker of truths, a flame that was born to move. And the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for everyone who's ever been touched by your warmth, is to keep going. The right people won't just let you shine. They'll help you keep the fire alive. Conclusion: protecting the flame that guides you. Sagittarius, let's strip it down to the truth. You are not just the light in the darkness. You are a moving flame, a guiding star, a breath of fresh air in a world that often forgets to dream. You were born to explore, to expand, to keep discovering new horizons that excite your spirit. That's not selfish. That's your design. And yet, somewhere along the way, you may have let someone pitch their tent in the warmth of your fire, until you forgot what it felt like to walk your own path. This isn't about blame. This isn't about calling someone toxic or cruel. Most of the time, they didn't even realize they were leaning too heavily on you. And you didn't realize you were giving more than you could replenish. That's what makes this so subtle. It doesn't look like a prison, but it feels like one over time. The truth is, love without freedom is not love. And light that never moves eventually burns out. So here's your invitation. Ask yourself the hard questions. After spending time with someone, do you feel more alive or more drained? Are you giving because you want to, or because you feel you have to? Do you fear that if you stopped feeding their light, they would leave? And does that fear keep you small? If any of your answers make you pause, it's time to adjust the boundaries. Not by cutting people off in cold silence, but by remembering that your flame matters too. Visualize yourself as the lighthouse once more. Tall, steady, radiant. You don't chase ships, and you don't dim your beam just because one vessel hasn't found its own compass yet. You keep shining at full strength, knowing that the right souls will navigate toward you. Not because they need you to survive, but because they choose to journey alongside your light. And here's the most beautiful truth of all. When you protect your fire, you give others a living example of how to protect theirs. You show them that self-preservation is not selfish, it's sacred. That love is not about staying in the same spot forever, but about walking together for as long as your paths align. Sagittarius, your destiny was never to be a stationary lamp in someone else's living room. You are the flame that climbs mountains, crosses oceans, and ignites possibilities wherever you go. You are not here to be someone's permanent survival source. You are here to remind them they have their own light. So go, step back into your own life. Feed your flame. Chase the horizon that's been calling your name. The ones who truly love you won't just accept it. They'll cheer you on as you rise, burn brighter, and light the way toward your next adventure. Because your light was never meant to be kept in one place, and neither were you.